The Abolition News Network and the history of slavery in the United States. We'll have that story next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. Steve Edison is the founder and the president of the Abolition News Network. He's also a historian, and he joins us today. Steve, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
This is so interesting to me. I didn't know anything about the Abolition News Network until recently. And I read something about it, and tell me if this is true or not, something that somebody else said. They said the Abolition News Network is sort of modeled after CNN. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's interesting. I didn't have CNN in mind, but maybe it was in my head, Abolition News Network. Yeah.
Well, what's the whole idea behind it?
Well, when I went to the Abraham Lincoln Museum in 2003, I think they opened up, and I saw Abraham Lincoln exhibits, of course the subject of slavery comes to mind. And I says, boy, this is interesting. You can tell any event in Abraham Lincoln's story of slavery in maybe 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And maybe this could be done as an interesting way to show history, because there was a history teacher, 8th grade, who says that the attention span of a 14-year-old is only 2 to 3 minutes. I says, then I got to keep this 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
So all your videos are maybe 5 minutes at most?
5 to 10 minutes.
And you've been doing this for, I think, almost 15 years. How many total videos have you done?
For Abolition News Network, we have, as of right now, 138 videos on YouTube.
You do these in DVDs, and they're available on YouTube. But what's really interesting is the interest people have shown in them. The amount of hits you had seem very impressive. How many hits have you had?
How many what?
Hits on YouTube.
1 million, as of right now, since we started, 1,174,949 hits on it.
You must be doing something right, huh?
We're doing something right. Well, people interested in the stories that I never thought people would be interested in. The slave trade. 20% of our viewers really like the slave trade subjects. Mm-hmm. That's been abandoned, outlawed since 1808.
Right.
So, it's almost surprising.
Isn't it true that you're trying to tell untold stories? I think that's the way you put it. And also, don't you make the point that the things that most of us know about slavery that we've learned in school and stuff is sort of a really simplified version, and that's kind of why you did all this.
Very simplified, oversimplified. It took hitting a lot of heavy-duty books to get all the material. This book by the station master William Still in Philadelphia, he wrote a 750-page book on just what he did. His station in Philadelphia, 750 pages. And then the slave trade itself, a 750 or 1,000-page book. They don't have time for this in school. Mm-hmm. Or in college.
Well, so why do you think it's important that we know more than we do?
Because the way we're living today, people don't understand why the African American is so upset with civil rights and so on, because 200 or 300 years or 400 years of slavery preceded before we even were talking about civil rights in the Civil War. So you can understand where we came from by studying slavery. And there's an awful lot of material there.
Uh-huh. Well, what I did, I picked out just randomly, and you have so many videos. So we picked out a few today, and we're going to look at just the first minute or so, and you know, to kind of talk about, just to give people an idea. But your videos are kind of different. Most of them, I guess, feature actors recreating roles.
Yeah, we pattern it after what you see on television, an interview with a couple of people sitting on a couch or a round table, being asked questions by an interviewer host. Take that from CNN, and people are used to seeing that. So we can tell a story. We can put a slave sitting here and an interviewer here from the 20th century, asking questions, and in 5 minutes, his whole story is exposed.
Mm-hmm. And some of them are even more creative than that, aren't they? There's some with song.
Sometimes there's some songs connected to them.
Right.
Some very famous ones. Follow the Drinking Gourd, Let My People Go, a well-known slavery songs.
Well, why don't we look at this first one? First, tell me just a little bit. The first video we're going to take a look at is titled Harriet Jacobs, What Slavery Really Is. What's that one about?
This is about a lady who was a slave. She went through a couple of slave masters, and she couldn't take it anymore, and she hid in an attic for 7 years, and food was brought to her, and she finally worked out an escape with a captain on a ship and got across the river to. It's an awesome story.
Well, whose house was she hiding in?
Not everybody can get free like that.
And like, whose house was she hiding in?
What was she hiding?
Whose house? You said she hid in
an
an
attic of the house where she was used to work.
Oh, I see. Someone just trying to help her. Is that what it was?
No, it was the slave. Yeah. Okay.
Close enough? Well, why don't we
Close
take a look
enough.
at the, we're going to take a look at the first minute or so of that
Yeah.
particular video, just to give our viewers an idea.
Yeah,
So let's take a
okay.
look.
Hello, this is Emily Summerfield for Abolition News Network. This is a fine spring day in 1861 in Washington, D.C. We're about to meet an incredible lady who lived in a slave state for 27 years, who endured mental and physical cruelty, who lived in an attic for 7 years. She escaped to the free North and has just published a new book called Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. Welcome to our studio, Harriet Jacobs.
Thank you, Ms. Summerfield.
So, would you like to tell our studio audience what slavery really is?
Certainly. I will tell you exactly what slavery really is. And my story is about enslaved black women who were just things, material possessions, who were subject to routine abusive treatment from their slave owners.
So why don't you tell us about your personal story as a slave?
I learned I was a slave when I was just 6 years old and my mother died. But I really learned what being a slave was like when my previous owner's sister married this Dr. Flint when I was 12. I'll never forget the words he said to me. "You're made for my use. You must submit to my every command. You are nothing but a slave who must submit to my will." I was only 15 and he was 40 years older.
In a news network with Steve Edison, the founder and president. Interesting.
Yeah, that reminds me, a slave is property. It's like a table or a chair. It's owned by a person. So it can't talk back. It's not allowed to complain because it's property. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it's looked at in law before the Civil War. So that's what she's getting to. She's just property.
And so this Harriet Jacobs, she actually wrote a book about slavery?
Yeah, this was her book, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. Very popular seller, I suppose, at the time.
Mm-hmm. Whatever happened to her?
She got free. She worked out a deal with a ship captain to get across the river and off to freedom. Mm-hmm. Many escapes like that.
I want to give a little shout out to Jim Trotter, who is a photographer and a videographer, and he's worked with you on some of these.
Yeah, I've been working with him at least 10 years, I'd say.
And also, you write most of this yourself, don't you?
That's what I do. I research and write, research and write, research and write, and occasionally hire actors and rehearse.
Well, where do you find these actors, by the way?
Oh, off the street. This lady that was interviewing Harriet Jacobs, she's a yoga instructor.
Really?
A dance instructor. Her real name isn't Emily Summerfield, it's something else.
I see.
And she teaches yoga. And some of the guys do other things. They work in restaurants. I mean, they're just regular people, but they like to act.
Let's take another look at, let's go to the second one now. This is Slave Trade, 1807, a personal perspective. Let's watch this and you can comment afterward.
Okay.
Good afternoon. This is Clark Cantilever for A.N.N., broadcasting live from Monticello, Virginia, the home of Thomas Jefferson, who has so kindly allowed us to use his dining room while he is away on business in Washington. Today is March 1st, 1807. We have with us today the largest slave trader in Rhode Island. In the annals of the American slave trade, he and his brothers are without peers. We are going to hear the story of the Atlantic Slave Triangle directly from him, Captain James DeWolf, or as his friends call him, Captain Jim.
How do you do, sir?
Very well, thank you.
Well, first of all, since we're in the president's dining room, I will refrain from smoking, but I do understand the president has some fine French wines.
Well, yes, he does, but we'll have to get to that later on. For right now, let's talk about the Atlantic Slave Triangle and how it works. We can use the globe over there.
Well, first of all, since Congress has passed a bill to abolish my business, I can tell you all about it in detail. Although I doubt a trade that has existed for 3 centuries and will probably go into piracy will be stopped by one law.
Steve, who is that character?
What's that character? James DeWolf. In real life, he was a hairdresser. But he liked to do this acting. And he played bad guys. So he played a very important role as the captain of a slaver. That's the name of a ship that carries slaves. They carry anywhere from 200 to 900 slaves on a boat, which was outlawed in 1808. And he's complaining his business was put out of business. And now it went sort of underground, but they still carried slaves. But it was illegal after his last voyage.
It's the Abolition News Network, and we'll continue with more after this. So, just sit here for a minute.
So when we said, where do we start? For me, it was that warmth and love. It said, let's start in St. Louis.
You're watching STL TV.
nailed it.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.
I'm Steve Potter, and welcome back to City Corner. Today we're learning about the Abolition News Network, which can be found on YouTube. Steve Edison is the founder and the president of that, and you've been doing them for about 15 years or so, and there's like 130 something.
Probably it was in 2004.
And some like 130 something altogether, different videos. that you've done.
139 videos right now.
And counting, right?
And counting. We still do one a month.
And so what you do is you sort of create a historical character, and you research these things, so we find out more than we find out in a typical history book.
Oh,
and then you have an actor acting like an interviewer from the 20th century interviewing someone
Exactly.
from the slave
What
time.
do you like to see on television?
Let's look at this one, and then you comment on it. This is Uncle Tom's Cabin, original illustrations from 1852.
The Abolition News Network, Incorporated, would like to present for the first time the complete illustrations from the 1852 third edition of Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. This group of drawings depicts the most physical and mental cruelty that were present in the southern states in the 19th century, and therefore may be too graphic to show to children. They also may be very disturbing to many adults who are not familiar with slavery as it was practiced in the 19th century. This video is intended for those who have a serious interest in the history of American slavery as it existed in everyday life in the southern states before the Civil War. Harriet Beecher Stowe's characters portrayed in this book were all from real-life actual people. This is explained more thoroughly in Key to Uncle Tom, published in 1853. We invite all your comments by writing to our email address, AmericanSlaveHistory1865@gmail.com. Abolition News Network, Incorporated, a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation. My name is Uncle Tom. I was a slave in the Old South. This is the story of part of my life until the end. This was our kitchen in Kentucky.
Harriet Beecher Stowe, she had a lot of, some people say she had a lot to do with the Civil War happening.
Many historians believe that her book came out in 1852, spring of, really got the North to see what slavery is like. And so I'd say that I would agree with that. That had a lot to do with causing the difference between the North and the South.
You mean just making people aware what was really happening?
Yeah, what it was
making
really
them think
like.
about it.
Because the North didn't have anything to do with slavery. Mm-hmm. And so this was bringing it right in front of their face.
Steve, you brought some interesting things here. You want to show me?
This is... here's some slavery shackles.
Now, are those real?
Little rusty. Maybe came off a slave. I don't know. I don't know how I got this. This is iron.
Let me pick that off the table for you.
You hook the slaves together with a chain that runs so you can tie a whole bunch of them together. And if you have an employee around here that's dispensable...
No, you better do it on me.
Oh, okay. Well, I could
I'll try.
do this. Okay, so do this. Now, I think you turn this, let's see, counterclockwise, like this. This is the key.
Oh, I see, and it comes off.
And then you take this, and this is like a key.
Huh.
Okay, there. And that
Now,
puts
so
the
this would
person in
be
a slave.
Would there just one?
And you-
Would this
you
just be
tie
on one
this to one of
another
your
slave?
tripods or something?
I see.
Okay.
What do we got here?
Okay, then this is now we get to the meat of the story. Now, according to Deuteronomy, where this came from, you're not supposed to whip somebody more than 40 lashes. So that came the system of whipping a person 39 lashes for a trivial offense. That's the minimum is 39 lashes with this.
That sounds kind of rough.
On the front side and the back side. A third on the front side, 2/3 on the back side. You read about this in the children's books. Okay. And that's slavery. This is the real deal here. And I better, you got your hand.
You want to take that off?
I'll take, okay, unless you.
You can't get this off
After
me.
24 hours, he'll realize he wants to get out of this.
But let's make a point. The reason you brought these and the reason you're demonstrating this and showing it is because sometimes people kind of gloss over what slavery was really like. And
Yeah, they don't see this aspect of it.
there we go.
Wait a minute.
There we go. Thank
I
you.
think I turned it in the wrong direction. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, it opens. Okay.
Well, I tell you what.
Yeah.
Let's take another look at a video that you produced for the Abolition News. Boy, that's loud. For the Abolition News Network, and this one is entitled 19th Century Gospel Song, Let My People Go.
When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Thus spake the Lord, bold Moses said, let my people go. If not, I'll strike your firstborn dead. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down.
Boy, the combination of the lyrics to that song and
I gotta say something.
the stuff, the pictures we looked at, is very moving.
Yeah, and the singer, he's a cantor at a Jewish synagogue by night, and during the day he's an engineer on one of the zoo trains. But his voice is perfect for this kind of a song.
And what did that mean to you?
The song?
Just that presentation, what we just saw.
It's a very powerful message. Let my people go. I just love that song. It's just it's
touches your heart.
It's sitting there as a message.
Let's look at one more. This is Slavery by State, 1776.
Good evening. This is Bambi Meadowlick for Abolition News Network. Tonight we are presenting the second Census Award for the state who has freed the most number of slaves since our founding in 1776, 24 years ago. The state that has freed the most number of slaves will receive the A.N.N. Freedom Award. The state freeing the least number of slaves or increased the most will receive the Ball and Chain Award. The new states will be named in worst to best order. My assistant, Tara Blackberry, will present the awards to the winners. The new states that have slaves are Kentucky at 40,000, Tennessee at 14,000. We have the Mississippi Territory at 3,000. We have the District of Columbia at 3,000 and the Indiana Territory at 135. Now, what we have been waiting for, the worst state to free the slaves, Virginia. She began with 165,000 slaves in 1776 and now has 346,000, an increase of 181,000 slaves, or about 43%. Will the Virginia representative step forward and receive the state award, Miss Lulu Dogwood?
I have a minute or so left. Do you want to say something about that?
I want to, that's my partner there, that blonde, that she says she's Bambi Meadow Lake. Her real name is Jessie. And she and I work on these every other week. We go over scripts.
Steve, we want to remind people this is the Abolition News Network, and they can find it on YouTube. What do you hope people get out of it?
That's a tough question. That actually really stumps me, because I know what I'm trying to get across is the way it really was hundreds of years ago, before it's forgotten. Because there's no course offered in high school or college, except at Yale, I understand, they have a course in slavery that can offer a comprehensive, totally very comprehensive understanding of the way slavery was and the slave trade for the hundreds of years before the Civil War. And if I was a teacher, this is what I'm trying to teach.
Steve, well, we're going to have some contact information come up, so we hope people will check out on YouTube the Abolition News Network. And it's been a pleasure meeting you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. There's the information, the Abolition News Network. I'm Steve Potter for City Corner. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye. So we just sit here. They're probably
You got Jesse in there.